This video is for those students studying Grade 4 Associated Board Music Theory exams, or those wishing to recap on the study of music intervals. It's important that you've watched part 2 of this series of videos, as this video expands on the concepts which I introduced in part 2. At Grade 4, you may be asked to name any interval in a key signature of up to 5 sharps or flats, major or minor. For the first time, the bottom note will not be the tonic note of a scale, and the interval will not exceed an octave. You remember at Grade 3 we discussed what happens when a major interval is made one semitone smaller. It becomes minor. In addition to this, at Grade 4 you need to learn the following very important rules. When a major interval is made larger by one semitone, it becomes augmented. When a minor interval is made smaller by one semitone, it becomes diminished. When a perfect interval is made smaller by one semitone, it becomes diminished. And when a perfect interval is made larger by one semitone, it becomes augmented. I'm afraid there is no escaping it. You will need to remember this important diagram for Grade 4 and above interval questions. There isn't that much to remember. If either a perfect or a major interval is made larger by one semitone, then it will be called an augmented interval. It's when perfect and major intervals are made smaller that there is confusion. Major, one semitone smaller, is minor, and note that only major intervals made smaller can become minor. Only minor and perfect intervals, when made one semitone smaller, become diminished. Note that perfect intervals never become minor when made smaller, just diminished. We'll look at some examples in a moment, but if you need to, please pause this video and memorise this important diagram. Okay, let's try an example. The bottom note may not always be the tonic note at Grade 4, but we still need to work out the number first. Please don't forget there's always the number first. To work this out, just count the number of lines and spaces from and to each note in the interval. I'll use a red note head to show where I'm counting. We always include the first note itself in the count, so here goes. 1 is on the same line as our bottom note, 2 in the space above, 3 on the line, 4 in the space, 5 on the line. So here's the number of our interval, a fifth. Jot this number down. As per the rules we learnt at Grade 3, we now compare our interval, a fifth, to a perfect fifth in C major. We'll use the keyboard at the top of the screen to help us count the number of semitones between C and G. So here's the C. To C sharp is 1, to D is 2, D sharp is 3, E is 4, F is 5, F sharp is 6, and G is 7. Therefore, 7 semitones make up a perfect fifth. Let's now count the number of semitones in our interval. Here's the B. To C is 1, to C sharp is 2, D is 3, D sharp is 4, E is 5, and F is 6. This is 1 semitone smaller than a perfect fifth. Let's remind ourselves of the rules for perfect intervals. Here's perfect, but our interval is 1 semitone smaller than a perfect fifth. Therefore, it is a diminished interval. As we've already worked out the number, a fifth, we now put the name diminished next to the number, and we can therefore call our interval a diminished fifth. Let's try another example. Now, you'll notice that this interval has a double flat. You may be asked about double flats or even double sharps in a Grade 4 exam. If you're not sure what they are, here's a quick explanation. You already know that a flat makes a note smaller by one semitone. So here's E. And if we add a flat, it becomes E flat, one semitone smaller. And E double flat makes the E smaller by 2 semitones. So it becomes a D, but be aware, it's not a D, it's an E double flat. There is an important difference which I'll explain in a moment. A double sharp works in the same way, but it doesn't make the note smaller, it makes it larger. So here's a C, a sharp makes it larger by 1 semitone, a double sharp, which looks like a little X, makes it larger by 2 semitones. So it also sounds a D, but is called a C double sharp. We call notes which are the same but spelled differently enharmonic equivalents, or sometimes just enharmonic. So E double flat is the enharmonic equivalent of D. C double sharp is also the enharmonic of D. Let's go back to our interval. Remember, calculate the number first by looking at where each note head sits on the stave. Here's the C, so that's 1. Next line is 2. Next space is 3. Therefore, we're looking at a third. Compare it against a major third in C major and count the semitones. Here's the C. To C sharp is 1. To D is 2. To D sharp is 3. To E is 4. Therefore, 4 semitones make up a major third. And don't forget to jot down that we now know that our interval is a third. Let's now count the semitones that make up our interval. Here's the C. To C sharp is 1. To D is 2. And remember, we're looking at an E double flat, which is the enharmonic equivalent of a D. So we stop counting at D. Therefore, our interval is 2 semitones smaller than a major interval. 1 semitone smaller than a major would be minor, but as our interval is 2 semitones smaller, it is a diminished interval. Therefore, as we already have the number, this is a diminished third. Always make sure that you count up to the note head first to calculate the number. This is even more important for double flat or sharp questions. In this example, we counted up to the space and found it was a third. If you deal with the names of the notes first, it can cause some confusion, as you might convert the E double flat into a D and count up to the D, which would give you a second. This would be incorrect. Do always calculate the number first. Here's another example. Start with the note head count. Here's the first, so that's 1. 2 is on the line, 3 is in the space, 4 is on the line. Therefore, this is a fourth. Jot that down. We'll compare our interval to a perfect fourth from C major. Let's count the semitones. Here's the C. 1 to C sharp, 2 to D, 3 to D sharp, 4 to E, 5 to F. Therefore, 5 semitones make up a perfect fourth. Let's look at our interval. F double sharp is the enharmonic equivalent of G, so we count from G. So to G sharp is 1, to A is 2, to A sharp is 3, to B is 4. Therefore, our interval is 1 semitone smaller than a perfect fourth. It is therefore a diminished interval. Add this name to the number we already have calculated, and it becomes a diminished fourth. Let's try one final example. Note head count first. Here's the starting note, so that's 1. The next space is 2. The next line is 3. Therefore, we're looking at a third. Jot that down. We'd now compare this to a major third in C major, but as we did this in an earlier example, we already know that 4 semitones make up a major third. Let's count the semitones from our interval. D to D sharp is 1. To E is 2. To F is 3. To F sharp is 4, and to F double sharp is 5. Therefore, our interval is 1 semitone larger than a major interval. It is therefore called an augmented interval. Add this name to the number we've already calculated, and it becomes an augmented third. I do hope this video has been useful to you. In my next video, I'll be looking at grade 5 interval questions. But in the meantime, thanks for watching.